So it is better not to initialize everything inside the init function. At least there is one place to look into to see what are the attributes. Yes. So it will give me an error now. So if I say M3 equal new employee like this, it will give me an error because now that I have redefined the init function and I redefined it to take these at least 3 initial values, it will give me an error if I ignore them. Yeah, well, there is no overloading. If you want to make them optional, you need to define default values. So let's say name equal, email equal. So all of them are optional now. So if I try to run it, employee 3 would run normally. There is no problem. Okay, yes.
Can you explain what the parameters to check out within the class itself, not the function?
So these are just like when we had, okay, so when we had this name like this, email like this. So self.name will point it to this one, right? Self.email pointed to this one. But what is the self.salary? It was added, right? It didn't exist, so it was added when we tried to write to it. So similarly, the same, it will be treated the same. All right, now how do we define other methods? So this is the like a very special type of methods that is called within the constructor to initialize the values. How do we define other methods? So let's say I'm gonna define print info method. So just like the same way I defined functions internally, but I would say diff and then call it, let's say, print info. Now in Python, I must define it with this at least one parameter that is usually called self. Okay, can call it this or call it whatever you want, but the parameter that would receive the pointer to the object. This is the minimum, even if I'm not going to refer to it. So here, for example, in the print info, would make sense to use the self in place that we would normally use a variable name. So here, in the place that we normally use a variable name, we can just replace it with a self. Okay. So if I wanted to print the information of imp1, I can just say imp1.printinfo. And the pointer to imp1 will be the value stored in the self in that case, and I can say imp2.printinfo. Now here, when we call the method through the object name, this is what we call the message passing. So this is the other concept in object-oriented principles. So it is not just, so you see when you call the function by itself like this is function call, right? So you look at the print, for example. Is this considered message passing? No, this is considered just a simple function call. But when we call a function that is defined as part of a class to apply on a particular object, so we have to start with the object name and then use the dot keyword and then call the function then. And in that case, it would be called message passing. Okay? Just one thing I want to say to finish this off is that if we define a function, even if it doesn't need access to anything related to the object, even if it's just a dummy print message function like this. So print message like this. It's not going to complain when I define it. Message it's not going to complain when I define it. It will only complain when I try to call it. So if I try to call it int1.print message like this, let's see what's going to happen. So see what the error message says. Employee print message takes 0 positional arguments, but 1 was given. So what does that mean? When it was called, when the function is called internally, the object reference was sent as the first parameter or as the first argument. Okay. So here, it's not a problem when we call it, it's a problem when it's internally called for the object. So when it's internally called for the object, the actual call will add the pointer to the object as the first argument, and that's why we need to have a parameter defined in order to receive it, even if we're not going to use it. Okay, so see here, I changed the definition by adding a parameter to receive that pointer. I'm not going to change anything in the call. Now, when I try to call it, it prints with no issues. Okay, so the function, when you define a method inside a class, you just make sure to have at least 1 parameter to receive that object reference. Okay, so that's all what we have.